games. It's all
Hi, everyone.
to mess with your head.
It is Mess with our head.
Hi.
We
Yes.
are we're here. We are recording this call today. I'm with Michelle and Andy Cook. And just for the record, Michelle, I call you Michelle Bonifaci.
Do you? Wow, that sounds amazing.
What
I'll be
is
there.
I
I
like it.
think that's because it's Corsican. I think it is from Corsican is French Italian, but
Okay.
I've never Boniface over here.
Okay. Okay, so I just
Used to
make
get
everybody's
made fun
name
of in
very,
school. Sorry.
very exotic. You know, I call Maria Therese, Maria Therese.
Oh
So,
yeah,
okay,
like it.
anyway, we're foot nerds and we're part of the Kajabi, the Foot Collective in Kajabi. And this is a call for our community and for ourselves because we haven't seen each other in a while, and we were all together in the Foot Nerd program back, I guess, in February and March. And so it's a bit of a reunion, but it's also to talk about Andy's recent planning his event and executing his event, which we call in Kajabi, which is our platform for the Foot Collective, Shoes Optional Stroll. So the Shoes Optional Stroll is something that was designed by our internal leadership crew that we could all around the world, people who participate in our Foot Collective community, could plan these shoes optional strolls for our families and our friends. Very simple, doesn't take any training. You just invite a group of people, plan a date and a time, take off your shoes and socks or not. So it was open to anybody, and that we would go out on these walks with our family and friends wearing natural shoes or no shoes or even unnatural shoes, and maybe having a go at some play before or afterwards, and essentially creating a thread of community around moving in nature or in our cities, and talking about the idea that about foot health. So Andy recently planned an event, and we wanted to debrief about it, not only for him but for us, to kind of see like what are the cheat codes, what are the tips and tricks, what works, what doesn't work, and we wanted to share that with you as well. In addition, we're also thinking that we just wanted to get to know each other again. We haven't talked to Andy in a while, and just want to introduce who these fine humans are. So Andy is one of the original foot nerds from the Foot Nerd program back in 2019 or 2019.
19. Mhm.
When Nick St. Louis was first creating the whole Foot Nerd program, and he stayed connected to us over time, and then eventually finished the 12-week iteration of the Foot Nerd program. And Michelle is a graduating class of March, our last Foot Nerd 12-week Foot Nerd program that we had before we ceased to continue, and then we moved everybody into the new platform. So everybody's spread out all over the world, about 200 of us. And so just wanted to maybe start with introducing you, Andy, you telling us a little bit about your background, what you did before, what you do now, and about your life, and the same for you, Michelle, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So, my professional background, I um, have been a chiropractor for almost 10 years, although I graduated from chiropractic school almost 10 years ago, is what I should say. I am not currently a licensed chiropractor, so I haven't been practicing. I do work currently in a chiropractic clinic, but I do the marketing and back end work, and then I do the like directing the rehab program. It's a very strength and empowerment based clinic where you would come in and have your symptoms managed um, through manual therapy and chiropractic adjustments and things like that. But then, probably most importantly and most emphasized by us and by my partner, the doctor Brandon, who would basically do a really in-depth assessment and then figure out exactly what the movements are that are going to cause more pain and what movements can be done without any pain. And so those are the movements that you can really build on. And then we have a whole gym outside the treatment office, and we would just like go and load up the movements basically. So this is I I had this clinic before the pandemic for a few years, and he was my partner then. And now, after the pandemic, he reopened the same clinic and hired me to do the marketing because I've just been out of the industry for since the pandemic, I guess, as that's just been that was a big change in my life in general. So we can probably get more into that pretty bit of it later. But I've been a foot nerd since 2019, which again, right before the pandemic. And then that was like what kept me connected to movement and health and wellness and like proactive self care throughout that period of time when there was a lot of other stuff that was just drastically changing over and over and over again in my life. Like there was that one constant where it's like, well, I have nature and then I have foot care. Like those are the things that I had. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell to start with. I'm very passionate about foot care. I've been on a foot care journey for about a decade, for about the same amount of time as chiropractic care. And it was, well, yeah, it's just been um, instrumental in many changes where I'm like, now I feel much healthier when I am turning 42 next week than I did all through my 20s and 30s. So yeah.
Mishelle, would you mind sharing a little bit about your background and who you are?
So, yeah, I've been into feet for quite a long time. I trained as a reflexologist in 2007, I think it was. So, or 2008. And my dad was a reflexologist. And so, as a kid, feet were kind of a thing. But I started the foot nerd, joined the foot nerd community only at the start of the year. So I've transitioned to barefoot shoes because I wasn't that side of things. I totally missed. And so it's been kind of I've launched myself into it this year, obviously getting to know you and being in the community. And for my own personal journey, it's just been a big missing piece with my chronic back issues. And as Andy said, I feel healthy, genuinely healthier now than I have been most of my life, even though I'm maybe not as fit, but I know my body better because especially from what we did through foot nerd training, and also how the explorer journey is put together, having a daily practice of movement, knowing how my body's working and connected. And so in my life, how it fits in a little bit is I home educate my children so they don't go to school, and they've never been to school. And so I am a single parent, so it's challenging, but quite challenging. But my clinic runs on weekends and around as often as I can around that. But I've also spent the last 6 years coaching online as well. But it's now that I want to get into the real world again. I've done a lot of online stuff, but the real world is where it's at, I think. Touching people's feet again after the whole last few years has just been incredible. And so, yeah, really looking forward to talking about these shoes optional strolls and how we can get more people barefoot.
Yeah. So maybe, and just by the way, you're both parents, and I just want to make a distinction just quickly that the three of us can't come from the background of the foot nerd training, which was the project by the Foot Collective, which was like a separate education program. And then now what we have is this whole other beautiful programming where you can still take coursework, like where you can do 42-day consecutive healthcare for your feet journeys. It's really great. And there are two separate entities, sort of. So I think that can tend to be confusing for people. But back to the two of you being parents. You're each parents of two children. Andy, your kids, you're four.
I have 4 children. Yes.
4 children.
Yes, I
And
have 2 babies and then 2 older children.
okay, yeah, and I want to talk about like the parents, the journey, the the wonderful, chaotic, challenging journey of being a parent too, because I think this is a thing that we don't really get into that much in our conversations, just around the sort of big picture foot care, whatever. It's kind of sterile in a certain way. We don't get into the nitty gritty of like what it's like to be either a single parent or a parent. I mean, before we started recording, Andy, you were talking about how you have a block schedule of taking a shower, certain times a week. And this is like a reality that I think is important to talk about, just little things like this, where it's not, it takes a lot to plan a life of care and nuance and, I mean, truly healthcare. So want to talk a little bit about that, and then we'll jump into to your event.
Okay. So for my part, I would say that like the period of time between the pandemic in 2019 and now, like that, what you have just described has been my entire life. Like my focus outside of just, earning money and surviving and everything like that would be how to um, how to effectively schedule your life so that you could just have the most intentional and gratifying life possible. Like it just because I noticed very quickly when I didn't do that, like I feel like, hot take, that might have been the end of my first marriage, like the unintentional approach to life. Um, so I decided very quickly when my marriage ended to um, fix as many aspects of my life as I possibly could that were not contributing to a life that I considered, gratifying. Um, and I've found that it is just really, really challenging to not get lost in social media and not get lost in work and in emails and in pain, like all of these things. I'm so fortunate, like I have not had to deal with chronic pain, and like I have uh um encountered some of the stories in the community who are people who have experienced incredible pain that has been, affected their life in a very real way. So excuse me. I feel that, yeah, just being intentional and, making sure that I'm carving out time to sorry, to you know, take care of myself, and then also, as important, take care of my partner and my children. Yeah, so I don't know. Let's let
Yeah.
Mishelle talk a little bit so I can compose myself.
Yeah, I can see my nose is getting shiny and red right now. But I think this is important because when I'm just going to preface this before Mishelle speaks, but we don't talk about the challenges that it takes to create a life of true meaning. When we talk about a foot conversation as a whole body conversation, it's not just a body conversation. It's like a whole spirit, emotional health, spiritual health, body conversation. It's like everything changes. If you truly want to shift if I truly wanted to shift my life, and I did, everything changed. My idea around money had to change. My idea around relationships had to change. When I took off my shoes and socks and said, I'm going to check this out because I did have chronic pain and I wanted to live more freely, I also realized that is exactly when I became like a little bit of, or a lot of, an outsider to like whatever connection I had to sort of a mainstream life with cars and 401ks and retirement plans and all this stuff. And money is a real issue, not to mention like caring for oneself first in order to have like the oxygen and the life to care for the people that you love. And then I think that with our men, I'm just going to dive right in. I think our men have like some issues that I think women, I think our ideas are different, and caring for a family and caring for people and trying to make a life with money and all the things that we need to have a high quality life is rather daunting, and there's not enough time in the day. And so I think that we don't acknowledge often enough the toll it takes on our emotional health, and our spirits. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. So thank you for being, like for having the courage to just talk about it. I appreciate that. And Mishelle, maybe you can share a little bit about your interesting journey.
Well, yeah, it's first of all, I just want to just sort of honor you, Andy, really, and just to witness your honesty and vulnerability and share. It's funny when these are unexpected things hit us there, we know we've hit something. Like with what you said, and you said it. You don't expect to suddenly, like, have this release, but you said it when you were spoken about taking care of yourself and your family as well, which is being the provider, being a man and having that responsibility for your family. And I just, how wonderful in a way, even though it's vulnerable, to have these, Ruth, we were talking about this the other day, we want to have real conversations. We want to have real and raw conversations with humans and talk. I don't mean to be negative, but I mean, let's just be real. We're human and we have challenges, and it's good to talk because I think people need it, especially with the social media and the fakeness kind of thing that we see kind of one side. And so it's nice to be part of that. So thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is a challenge to take care of ourselves. I think it's, gosh, I don't really know where to begin, but I know for me, I've had to make a lot of changes the last few years. And some of them have been quite hard. I suppose it's boundaries. It's like I've really seen how I have to come back to what's important, like what is truly important. And it's something I journal all the time when I get carried away with a million different things or projects, or I've got a new idea. I'm like kind of like that, bit of an airhead, and I want to do everything, and I can't. Yeah, I haven't got a partner that's here. I'm supported in some ways, but I'm on my own. I don't like saying this because there's a part of me that I don't like to be a victim. And I'm very much, I'm fine, I'll do it type person. And I do, but I it's hard being on my own with the kids, but also I think I'm very, very lucky. I feel lucky and privileged to be able to spend this time with my children. And so sometimes I get this pang of, I really wanted the career because I believe, and I think most of us feel that we've got this potential inside us, and I can do anything if I put my mind to it and I focus on it. I can't do it all. And being a mother is the most important thing to me, and I've always enjoyed it. And I went through a stage the last few years actually feeling bad about saying that, because everyone else around me, it's like not cool to really like spending time with your kids. It's not cool to enjoy that side of things. And it's not to say that it's easy, but it's like, I choose this. I choose being a parent first and foremost. But how can I do this stuff? I think that's the question. How can I do everything I want to do that's important to me, and take care of myself? Because when I'm poorly, if I'm sick or whatever, which it's not too often, but if I am, no one else can have I have to make some phone calls, and it's hard to ask for that help. That's another thing that's been a learned behavior of mine, to actually ask for help. But things have had to go. So I came off social media in the summer, and I was a big fan of, so I'm out there doing it all, but it had to go because it was eating my time and energy. And there's been other things as well, relationships with certain people. I was in WhatsApp groups, and I'm a very much a a chatter and a giver, and I love talking, and but I couldn't do it all because it was just taking up my time. And so I had to have this practice where I draw, probably got it in my journal. I draw myself whenever I'm feeling like something's got to change, something's got to change. I draw my energy, like I draw a circle and I draw like a stick me, and I just write down everything that I'm giving. I view them as like portals that are open. I know it might sound a bit like woo or weird, but I view them as portals are open, and that's where my energy's going. All these things, children first, meal planning, like buying food, like what a effort sometimes, like having to think about what I cook, or just little things like
have kids and food takes up 70% of my brain.
snacks on all of that stuff. And then but I mean, I like to, then I'm like, no, I want to enjoy it. And I try and batch cook, and I enjoy the challenge because I'm a bit of a process person where if I see a problem, I'm like, right, how can I make that better? That's just what I enjoy to do. So it's like the life is just a challenge, but I'm kind of like, my attitude, the only way I can survive without falling into the darkness, which I often do, I've spoken to Andy about this, I can go into some dark spaces. I've learned to sit there and be with it. I've learned how to be with it now, but it's a constant case of what's important today and what needs to disappear, like eliminate to accumulate. I think you told me that once, Ruth. That's been a big thing in my life. Decluttering, stop consuming not just what I buy, so there's more to clean, more to put away. This is a big subject, but what I'm consuming, I'm reading these blogs, watching the podcast. I can't create what I want to create while I was kind of doing everything I was doing. So it's taken me about a year to actually get clarity on what that is. But the priority, though, is taking care of myself. And I know for me, my children are older now, so doing this around them was something I've always done. I've always sat and journaled with them, even the early hours. I've always made sure that I do need to escape. And I think parents definitely need time alone. I'm not saying not, but I've had to learn how to do everything around them. And that's what I've helped other mums do in the past, actually. It's like, because I can't leave them, but that does involve, getting up earlier, or not watching social media after they've gone to sleep, not being on my phone after they've gone to sleep, which sometimes that's all I want to do. And that's okay. But I don't know, just getting more intentional about everything. But it means also that I'm a bit boring sometimes. Like, I'm a bit of a stickler. I've been invited out tomorrow night to see a country music band. I might not go if it's too late for me, because if I don't get proper sleep, then I start to feel a bit run down. It's unfortunately, that's what taking responsibility is. It means I'm a bit of a boring old fart sometimes, but I'm really happy being like that.
Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting thread back to like what I personally learned through the years of being part of the Foot Collective, is that I remembered that it took a long time for it to sink in, the part like where Nick would say, we want to remove the obstacles to better foot health or better health, 6-pillar health, rather than adding more to. And I have spent my whole life trying to like add to the life to make it better rather than subtract the obstacles from the life. And then the part where you said, if I become an old fart because I wouldn't want to get better sleep, it's like, well, that sleep pillar is so important to our health. And I think like just making those choices, like I think that I just shifted my whole perspective through that year-long program of like, okay, I gotta like set aside time so I can actually deeply learn about what it is that I'm doing in my life. And I think that was the gift of going through that part of the Foot Collective, was that I would not have set aside the time otherwise to actually reflect. I mean, seriously, it's not like, I don't know if other people feel this way, but like I can let a ton of information flood over me and I'll be like, yeah, I got that. I get that. But to sit down and actually reflect and take a note about what's truly happening in my health and in my body, requires there not to be very much else in my life that isn't important to me. Like the clarification process of those exercises are extremely important, you know? So as far as like so back to like the shoes optional strolls and the events, like when it comes time to say, okay, I have work that is meaningful. I want to take this back to you, Andy. Work that is meaningful in my life. Well, first, I think we have to get our own shit together first, right? Our own health, because I find that I can't care about my community, and I get irritated that I don't. But if I don't have my nuts and bolts in order in my own body, it's like I can't go lead the community. Like we can only take people as far as we've gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then once all those pieces are together, your body, your family, your work, all your 6 pillar health within reason, it's not ever going to be perfect. Then you want to start to reach out to your community for, like, let's say the shoes optional stroll. So can we go to your event and why you created that? And also wanted to hear about like the pieces that you have put together now, since you recently have quit you were in chiropractics, you were working, you went into a sanding business, so you were working in construction essentially. Then you recently quit that a month ago, and now you're back into a life and work of health, true healthcare.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my primary income comes from um, on-site employee care. So I will go into, in this case, it's an egg processing facility. So they have like it's an industrial chicken and egg farm, and I go there once a week, and I treat 35 people for repetitive strain injuries from working in the industrial world.
Wow.
This job I had also before the pandemic. That was my primary source of income then as well. And it really, like, that really instilled in me a passion to at least try to provide some sort of relief to the workforce in our country, because it is brutal out there. And yeah, so that's like my job, and it's also kind of like a source of passion, but also um, almost distracting, because like that world is not a world where I'm a foot nerd. That world is the world where I'm the company doc, right? Where their boss sends them when they have complained of some pain so that I can treat their symptoms and educate them for 15 minutes at a time. So like the expectations that I can have for the, let's say, quote unquote impact, because I know that even just that 15 minutes of soft tissue care is creating tremendous impact on them. But, I can complain all I want about like it not being the right kind of impact, not being the kind of impact that I want to give or whatever. But a lot of them don't even speak English. So, I mean, there's more than just time barriers in there and everything like that. And then like they are the coldest of cold patients. Like in marketing speak, like they are the people that aren't even aware that there's a problem necessarily. They got some pain that's interrupting their productivity, I would say, even. And then they're being sent to me, and then I, impart a message to them. And oftentimes that message is, as much as I possibly can, get your work boots off as outside, spend time outside, get your work boots off, do a little bit of foot care, even if it's a shoulder injury or something like that. It's like, start to take care of yourself outside of work, because your work doesn't care about your body, really. And that's an unfortunate truth. And so you have to be responsible for it. And so like before before the pandemic, I was really kind of wishy-washy on the way that I delivered this message to people. I would just be like, and I'm sorry, I haven't talked about the shoes optional stroll yet. I will.
No,
I
that's
will
okay.
talk
This is the shoes optional stroll is a side note, actually.
I feel like it too because it didn't happen. So that's neither here nor there. I feel I feel, and now where was I?
Well, you were talking about your people and how you were getting your message. Like, what was your most important way to get your message across after?
Right. So yes, the way to, or the way that I would try and get a message across, I would just try to give as much, just like a general said principle based discuss, or no, okay, I'm sorry, I remember where I was now. So back then I was very wishy-washy before the pandemic. I was very like, you can do better to take care of yourself and da 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 da. But not really. I don't think I quite understood the implications then, and I think I'm just doing a better job of understanding like what is happening to these folks, and I'm trying to, like eliminate their BS as much as I possibly can, and just be like, that's, I appreciate that you feel that way, and I appreciate that this pain is overwhelming, but you really do have to do something about it. It can't be just, complaining to me and then getting a little bit of massage, because we're talking about like I always kind of compare it in my head to like, Hurricane Katrina in terms of force against the body versus the dikes that failed, and then there's a flood, and this is just kind of a constant input on the body that is the same, and so it's pretty harmful, and so people just need to do as much as they can to offset that outside of work, because, and that could include getting a different job. In my case, it was it was designing an entirely different life. Like where I have the aforementioned block schedule where I make sure that I've identified very clearly what's important to me, and like supporting my partner is really important to me. She needs sleep, so I get up in the morning, I'm with my kids, I don't leave for work until like 9 most of the time. Like I'm very, very lax about the time that I spend in office, and I'm so fortunate to have that opportunity too. Like I'm that is not to be ignored, that I'm just very, very fortunate to have that opportunity, but it is almost a requirement to really kind of identify what is important to you and then make decisions based off of that, because otherwise it gets lost in the flood, man. Like it just goes away. So the shoes optional stroll part of it.
Can I
Oh,
interrupt
sorry.
you, because I have a question about what are the repetitive, when you go to the eggplant, what are the
Mhm.
injuries that you treat? Like, and what is the environment like? I'm trying to imagine what you do.
Mhm.
So
Sure.
my husband's family used to be in small business chicken farming, and
Mhm.
anyway, so I kind of know. And my mother-in-law
Mhm.
was a food grader for the eggs,
Sure.
GA, and I know what those plants look like. Like, where do you
Mhm.
treat, and what are you treating for? And I
Mhm.
mean, I imagine just the human touch is probably something,
Yeah, totally. Just like having a smiling person look at you.
or just
Like
even
these
like
things are
touch
all.
your whatever you're touching.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
I think is probably important.
Yeah. So I mean, it's very much. I feel like it doesn't even look. It looks like a factory, and then there's some warehouses nearby where there are chickens, and then there are people that drive the chickens and the eggs to the factory, and then there's lots of uh, uh, um, conveyor belts and people that clean stuff and people that operate the conveyor belts and things like that. So there's all kinds of injuries, but this particular plant makes egg whites for a large national distributor, and makes bags of eggs for restaurants, and makes the little egg tacos for like a Bruegger's egg sandwich or like a Subway egg sandwich, something like that. Not those specific businesses, but just to just to convey what they're doing, little egg tacos. So there's lots of little gripping movements, and there's lots of, sweeping and cleaning, and then there's walking all day long on just this unrelenting concrete floor in, the most inexpensive muck boots you can get a hold of, because you have to put them on hundreds of people, and they have to be steel toe, so they're all heavy. And then there are people that drive forklifts, and so they're stand-up forklifts, so they're standing in one position and then looking around and doing their job from this one position. And then there are people that are driving forklifts, and so they're sitting in one position and just doing that. And so there's, you have back pain, you have shoulder pain, you have wrist pain, you have, the occasional foot pain, but I think that's usually drowned out. I think most of these folks would have foot pain if they just didn't have all of the other pains that they tend to experience, which, we do head off reportable injuries. So like, it is a really, really beneficial for both the healthcare system, the insurance system, the workers, me, and the company, right? Like, so this system is, it's not gatekeeping to keep them out of the system. Like, if they have an injury that they need to go to receive more care for, I'm their biggest advocate to get them out there. But I definitely, I know that yeah, it's a really, really beneficial program that these companies tend to put on. And I always feel like it speaks very highly of the company when they, at least care that much about their employees. So that's really cool.
You go on site. So what is
I go on site, so I work off the loading dock, right? So this particular place, like, there's this like, they load trucks in this area, and then there's a little room. So it's like a little industrial closet. It's as big as 3 closets. So I have enough room to set up my chiropractic table or my portable treatment table and my computer. And I put the chair away so that I'm kneeling the whole time. It's funny, I take all these pictures of myself, like, kneeling at my workstation and not sitting at my workstation, and how I mess around in this room and everything like that is just like this workplace weirdo series where it's like, you really, if you're in this place, you got to do this really, really odd shit. Excuse me. Just really, really odd stuff. And people stare at you and look at you funny, and you're, considered strange. But then eventually, like, people ask a question, and that's when I can actually deliver meaningful information. So yeah.
Wow, that is so interesting. And that is, see, like, I would never know about that, what you do. That is crazy. It almost is like the shoes optional stroll is like, I don't know. I know that we planned this call to talk about the shoes optional stroll, but it seems so ridiculous. I mean, no, seriously though, it's like, we have bigger fish to fry. But let's just go ahead and take it there, because that is like that is part of it, right? Like, why? Let's just start there. Like, like, why the shoes optional stroll then, when this is, so you do this 2 days a month, you said, and that pays your
once a week. I go once a week.
once
It's like an 8-hour day where I drive an hour and a half each way. So it's really like a 14-hour day or 12-hour, 10-hour day, something like that. I promise I'm good at math. I can do math on the fly.
About the math. I am curious about how you put it all together, right? So this is, you were talking to Mishelle before we started recording about, you do that, and that's like your primary income source and a service to industry. And then you have, and then you also work for Twin Cities Movement. And is this where those shoes option, like, what's your
yes? So that's Twin Cities Movement is a chiropractic clinic, like I was talking about at the beginning. The shoes optional stroll was basically a half-hearted attempt to get some marketing events going for Twin Cities Movement.
Okay.
I planned it about a month and a half in advance. But I only have like 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week to do the actual marketing for Twin Cities Movement. And so I also had to do a lot of other important marketing work for Twin Cities Movement, so I didn't get the word out as much. And we have a very small following when we just reopened, and like, so it was a marketing event that I feel like I'm probably not going to do things that way again. I think I'm going to be much more callous about how I separate my the work of my passion, which would be the shoes optional stroll in nature. Like that's what I wanted to spend all my days doing. So like that, I'm gonna have to separate that in just to be fair to Twin Cities Movement, where I do owe, you know, I get paid to do marketing for Twin Cities Movement, and this was that, but it just wasn't a full-hearted enough attempt at that because I was trying to split my attention in so many ways, and I feel like that's been kind of a hallmark of my entrepreneurial career in general. I'm like, you know, one distraction after the next, dive into this thing, dive into this thing. I mean, it's so fortunate that the Foot Nerd program has been so like fulfilling in so many ways, because it really was that as well. It was like, man, I'm bored. I'm alone in my chiropractic clinic. I want to do something. I'm going to get connected somewhere. Like I knew what I actually had to do, and it was not join the Foot Nerd program, but I joined the Foot Nerd program, and I'm really glad that was one of those happy accidents. But those kind of things happen, like Mishelle was talking about, where you really, it's very easy to get distracted when you don't have a North Star, I guess would be the way to look at it. You don't get to continually check in on what's important to you. So yeah, I go to that place once a month, and then I work for Twin Cities Movement twice a week doing the marketing work, and the shoes optional stroll was supposed to be for that. But that was just like, again, I just really like natural connection. And that's the passionate thing. That's like the reason for being in the Foot Nerd program is not Twin Cities Movement. It's natural connection, if that makes sense. Like those two things fit together. And then Twin Cities Movement is just kind of its own thing, I found from doing this event in this way.
And this is where I kind of wanted to turn it over to Mishelle, because she had some really thoughtful questions for you. I just wanted to, I don't know if I'm springing this on you, Mishelle, but we just wanted to, I guess, just wanted to go through the, I mean, you kind of explained everything right now, but like, what do you think worked? What did you like about what you planned? And I guess maybe this would be like tips for other people if they've actually
Sure.
listened this far into our talk and maybe we're planning something like this. Like,
Mhm.
what did you think that you did well to plan for this? And then like tips and tricks that maybe you could give to other people who would want to
Mhm.
do this? Because I do think that people want to, but I think we get
Mhm.
bogged down by distraction and also
Mhm.
fear that we're not going to do it right, or whatever the reason why people don't plan for their
Yeah.
communities. So wanted to talk a little bit about that. And then Mishelle,
Mhm.
if you have, I saw by your face that maybe I might have
Sorry.
sprung it on you, but you had some great insights and good, thoughtful feedback. So I wanted to just hear about your own experience, details wise.
I'm sorry. Was that directed at me first and then
Yeah,
Mishelle?
so take us,
Okay.
yeah, take us through your, just how you planned, what was your intention for the event? Like
Sure.
how many people
Sure.
did you plan? Like I know you were, they know there was a fee. So one of the things that I
Mhm.
noticed is that people don't want to pay for stuff that are
Mhm.
really good for them, and that
Mhm.
people, you know, maybe we get so much free content that when you actually have something have something that you're
Mhm.
asked to contribute money for, we don't want to
Mhm.
pay. Things like that, like
Yeah.
how many people, the nuts and bolts of what you planned, then and then like what went well and what you would do differently next time.
Mhm. So I had a fee because when you pay attention, or so some marketing experts tell us. And I do believe that to at least the extent that I pay more of attention when I have more skin in the game. And so because of the complexity of the message that we're trying to deliver, like I I find it very hard. Like I'm not a glad handing kind of guy. Like I'm not really. I go. I'm very awkward small talk conversationalist. because I would much rather talk about the squirrel that I saw playing around in the tree outside my house the other day. And people think that's strange when you are introducing yourself that way. So, so I find it challenging to have fluffy content as well, and I don't want, I want to skip that part, and so I feel like if I can get as much of kind of a written introductory message as I possibly can to, let's say, weed out people, and get people that are going to be truly interested and not people that are um, tourists, I guess, for lack of a better term, people who are taking advantage of a Groupon is something that I would liken it to, where you're just kind of buying it because you get the deal, and then maybe you even use it and maybe you don't, that kind of a thing. So I wanted to have kind of pre-screened, for lack of a better term, people come to this event, and that would have been beneficial for Twin Cities movement as well, because people who are going to pay for a natural connection and natural mindfulness event they probably care enough about their health to know, or to listen to a health educator talk to them about, how this connects to their back health, for instance, which is what my overall intention was. It was like I one of the things that I did well, I feel, was preparing the actual event. Even though I didn't deliver, I was very confident in how it would have gone had I delivered it. And the long and short of it was basically like it all hinged around, there was like a 2 or 3 minute story at the beginning that I worked very hard on, and was very intentional about. I didn't just randomly write it. I consulted speaking experts and business storytelling experts about how to effectively deliver a message in a short amount of time, and then wrote an introduction, based on that. And I was rather proud of it. And I practiced with family members, and it was, that was the real thing. So I took it at least seriously enough to prepare for it. And then I also had the actual event planned, which was honestly like, it was Black Friday, and we're in Minnesota, so it's colder. And there was a chance that we were not going to get any people who were going to be willing to take their shoes off, because oftentimes there's snow on the ground at this time of year. So I wasn't really billing it locally as a shoes optional stroll. I was billing it as a natural mindfulness walk, that's kind of like the side hustle thing that I'm interested in getting into, is really just kind of introducing deeper natural connection into people's lives, because boy, if there has been one thing that has been more transformational in my life than foot care, it is natural connection. And so, yeah, that's why the event and what the event was. And there's 6 people, limited to 6 people. And yeah, just kind of like the Black Friday part was a very, very intentional part too, because
That's interesting. It's like if there was ever a day that no people would sign up for a natural mindfulness walk, it would probably
very telling. Yeah, be that day.
Something that stands out to me is that there are very few people in general who are really, maybe like, even just when you're talking about the people that you treat at the factory, and like there are actually very few people who are on a path like this.
Mm-hmm.
So Mishelle and I were talking a little bit about this on another call together, about like how it's almost like we have to do personal, we have to create personal relationships. We have to find out who the people are that would even be interested in something like this, or who are just having the spark of curiosity, and then build those relationships, and then almost like personally invite those people. Because it seems to me that like there's no possible way, like we were talking about, one of Michelle's insights was there's no possible way to actually get the word out on the internet via social media, or even like our in our Kajabi community with the Foot Collective, it's just too much, maybe chaos, or like there you can't cut through the noise. And so it's almost like this is like a really sort of grassroots, feet on the ground. I was going to say boots on the ground, but
No way.
bare feet on the ground, like talking to people and then inviting them. I mean, it's a very in-person, personal thing.
Mm.
It's almost like, it's almost like we're kind of like, well, I don't even know what to say. It's like the Aussies do such a great job because they have created like this whole big brand and personality, and they're like already
They have
in.
a very good culture already established there.
Yeah.
It's excellent.
And
They've
they're
done a really good job of establishing that.
right, and they're in cahoots, like in the same
Mm,
location. They all work together, right? So when
mm,
they go and do an shoes optional stroll, I mean, I see it in the pictures. They're all together, and it's like, well, maybe if three of us were in person together,
yeah, yeah.
supporting each other, and like you were saying, um, and I find this to be true, right? Like there's one person like you, Andy. You're like, I'm gonna be the storytelling, natural walking guy on who does the event, and I would be like, well, I'm not really actually interested in going on the event, but I can do the behind scenes, emailing everybody and saying like, don't forget, you signed up for this. And like, it's almost like it's like in business, like there's the talent and then there's the behind the scenes people that do all the,
Hmm.
that everybody does a little bit, has a strength that they do well. And
Hmm.
so that is where I think, one of the things we talked about in the beginning of this call is that Mishelle was saying, like, it's not easy to go it alone. And
Mm-mm.
I find that I don't want to create a community event by myself anymore. Like, I don't want to
Hmm.
be the sole person that's like, hey, everybody, come and balance and take this class. It's like, screw that.
Yeah.
We went to Tampa, to the Clearwater event where I met Nick and the Aussies in person. We
Hmm.
walked into Ben Patrick's ATG studio, and I felt like we were just like a crew. I felt like my hair
Hmm.
was blowing in the wind. We
Walking in slow-mo.
we were all together like a big posse, and I mean, I
Yeah, I
get
love it.
goosebumps. I was like, that I don't ever want to be without that, you know.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I think there's almost like this, like there's a stalemate to create
Hmm.
events unless you can get I mean, this is my personal feeling. I want a
Yeah.
crew. I want
Yeah.
Mishelle by my side. I want
Right.
to go, I want you there. I want people there that are like me. There's just strength in numbers, and it's way more fun. I don't want to do it alone.
Hmm. Yeah. I
So
completely
that was a
agree.
bit of a tangent, but what do you say about that?
I completely agree. It has been I would have I would love to grow the Kajabi community locally. Like I would love I have no idea if there are any other Minnesotans. Well, I know that there's one other Minnesotan on the Kajabi community, and she is also employed by the Foot Collective. But
Would
like, yeah, and like I don't know, she's 2.5 hours away from me, so it's somewhat helpful. Like we could collaborate and we could plan something really cool. And I have planned on we're going into winter where it's going to get a little bit harder to do that. But I have been meaning to do that. But again, you have all well and good to have to mean
yeah.
something, and then and so like that will probably happen eventually. But I would like to be able to somehow grow that community locally and then utilize that a little bit as a way of deepening the connection and getting a crew together, basically. Because I do agree, and at this point, like, um, I I see the value in free for that. Absolutely, like I would not pay, or I would not have a friend or a playmate come and pay to play with me. That would be very different. I would offer that my time and my knowledge for free at that point. Like that would just be like come and spend some time and we'll do this.
But
So that would be a very different thing that I think yeah, I don't know. That would just be a different thing
and
entirely.
maybe this is a different podcast. I'd like to get together
Mhm.
again because I think we
Yeah.
probably do wrap it up. But I
Yep.
I think that we need to dig into the fee for service conversation, because I don't think that's true. I think there's something about like the global shift, why I ever was interested in what Nick St. Louis presented in the original like Sapien Code Foot Nerd Manifesto, was that we were gonna the goal is to shift the global culture and perspective about what is true healthcare, and that the people who were providing benefit and education and helping people would be paid for that, just like docs are paid for their service now. When you go to the doctor to get a checkup or whatever, you pay for your service, or your insurance pays, or whatever it is. And I think that we might have gotten into a sticky situation where, I mean, if you think about the education that each of you have and that we have as like Foot Nerd community collectively, I mean, there's chiropractors, there's Michelle's a reflexologist, like the amount of education and nuance that goes into creating an expertise around fee and health and six pillar health. I mean, it's extraordinary the amount of education each of us has. It's it's not prized or valued in the same way that you would go to the hospital and see a doctor is, but I think that that's a problem. And I think that we ourselves have to start acknowledging that like a fee for our service is an important thing. And that, I don't know when that's going to shift, but I think that there are conversations that need to be had around that, like if I go to the chiropractor, if I were to go to see you, Andy, I would expect to pay for that,
Yep.
And then
Yeah, and that was another part of the reason that I was planning on charging as well, is because I have done a lot of free events, and I just was not in the mood to do that this time. I was in the mood to charge for my services this time, for my expertise and my knowledge. So
absolutely.
yeah.
I think that has to change, right? Like that we value what we do. We have to, one of the exercises that I did with Nick when I first started working with him, is I broke down like the amount of money that I have spent on, because I kind of had a little bit of poverty consciousness, if you will, around like what I offer. And I broke down the amount of money I've spent on my undergraduate degree, my graduate degree, all of my continuing education, all of the freaking certification programs, and all of the money that I spent to travel to places to learn from the so-called experts. When was I going to step into the fact that like, okay, and it's only now where I go to something and I'm like, that kid doesn't know anything
Yeah,
about
totally.
anything. Oh my
Absolutely.
God, I can't believe I just paid for that. So that's right now, I'm like, oh no, I could have done that better. I'm doing it better. Like I'm gonna actually apply all of the education that I have been accumulating over the years, and I'm gonna offer something, I'm gonna charge for it. And so Michelle, I think probably we should wrap it up, because we've been going for way longer than I thought we were. But I love this, and I think we should continue it if you both wouldn't mind.
I'd absolutely love to.
Michelle, any closing, anything you want to add before we wrap up?
I probably better not add anything, because I'll just carry on. But I think it would be a really good exploration to go further into this, because I just want to say though, Andy, you did it though. You put it out there. You put it out there on all levels, and I just wonder, my mind kind of works like an old, what would have happened if one person would have come? Like, there's two perspectives, isn't there? There's like, I did that for one person, and blah, blah. Or now it's almost like just one person, you would have changed. And so I think not, and I don't want to be like this. Well, I do. I am a positive Polly sometimes, but it's like you've done this big thing, and you're now ready for next time. And in fact, we wouldn't be having this conversation, I don't think, if you'd have had these 15 people. Well, we probably would, but it's very, I just think sometimes we've got to zoom out and look at why things are happening. This is all valuable. And the money thing is important to discuss. Being a facilitator, being a leader, our time, the fact that you arrange everything as well, the kit, the training, I put snacks down as well, or just I think, yeah, I'm getting excited because I just know that this is important, what we're talking about now.
I agree.
And I want to do this in the spring here, hopefully do something in the spring. And I don't know how I would go about it yet. Part of me is thinking maybe would I start with just friends and yet to charge, because they're helping me start something. Like it wouldn't be an awful lot of money, but a contribution for my efforts in let's get out and connect with nature and all the rest of it, that follows. So yeah, I think more conversations about this would be really helpful.
Yeah, and in closing, I agree. I think it's so cool because I love situations like this. Sometimes when I plan events, I'm almost like, and I put all that preparation in, I almost hope that people don't show up. I never want to say that, but like I've planned yoga events where I'm like, oh God, I hope nobody shows up. And then, but the thing is like going through the reps, getting the reps and being prepared. And now you have all that preparation and you're ready to go when it happens again. And then I am going to plan for us to do this again, and maybe we can just keep the conversation going around all of it, without any like one particular focus, but the life focus, the work focus, the health focus, and the event focus.
Oh, can I just say one more thing?
Yes, of course.
Is it Ulysses? Is that how you pronounce his name in Spain?
I
I
can
wonder how.
I can pronounce it for you in some more exotic way, but no, I
Probably
think,
Ulises.
yeah, exactly.
Well, he seems to be growing something, and I know he's been doing it a long time, and I'd like, having these conversations maybe with him and breaking it down, because there's not one set way of doing it, is there? There's not like, we've got to kind of find our way, but I think hearing from other people and what worked, what didn't,
Yeah.
it is valuable. Might be
Yeah.
valuable.
Very.
I'll invite him to come and join us.
Sweet.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for listening. If you've made it this far into our in-depth journey, and we will catch you in the next episode. Have a great day, everyone.